Welcome, welcome, gorgeous beings of light. This is Elmara coming to you with miracle number 99. In the 100 Miracles in 100 Days project, let us begin by taking a big, long, slow, deep breath in, as deep as you can go, filling up your belly and your lungs with air, letting it out with a sigh, out through the mouth, in through the nose, holding it for as long as it's comfortable, out through the mouth, in through the nose and out through the mouth. Okay, so second last miracle. Oh my God, who can believe we're here? It's taken me all day to go through what miracles I've got left to tell you and choose the best two for the last two. Today's miracle is more of a shows you what's possible when you let go of stuff kind of miracle rather than, well, I guess it was a miracle because I opened a temple shortly after it happened. So, but just before we begin, I just want to connect you to the fifth dimension as well. The first step of my fifth dimension activation, breathing in, becoming aware of your hands, point them to the sun, breathe out and tie the energy from your fingertips around the sun. Breathe in, draw all the energy down from the sun, breathe it out into your being and take the last 5% down into the core of Mother Earth. Tie that energy around the core of Mother Earth. Breathe in. Draw all that energy back up. Let it flood every cell, every atom, every molecule of your being. And take the last 5% up to the sun. Breathe in. Source light from the sun. Breathe out. Let it fill up your 100 trillion cells and your 100 trillion telomeres. Take it down into the core of Mother Earth. Breathe in. Bring all that earth energy, all that abundance, everything you need to sustain your physical life up. Breathe it out into your being. Take the last 5% up to the sun. Now please continue doing this breath throughout this activation we're about to do for you. It is best done standing barefoot on Mother Earth at dawn. But if it's snowing or raining or nighttime, the sun's out somewhere in the world, you can just imagine you're standing barefoot on Mother Earth. You can do it seated. Just make sure your back's off the back of the chair, your spine is off the back of the chair so the energy can flow up and down your spine. And if you're sick, you can do it laying down. Just, excuse me again, imagine you're standing barefoot on Mother Earth as well. Just breathe in for me, please, and out. Or you can just return to breathing in through the nose and out through your nose. But you will find if you begin to do just step one for 10 to 20 minutes a day, the flow between earth and the sun, the source, the sun source, and earth with all the abundance of everything you need, you come into alignment, your meridian lines come into alignment. And within not too much time, you actually begin to feel you'll just begin to feel and feel better, firstly, but secondly, you'll begin to see some cool stuff begin to happen around you. So just continue that breath in. If you would like to learn how to become a fifth dimension, powerful fifth dimension spiritual activator and healer, we have our 10-week training coming up in April. And we would love you to join us. Please contact me through my website, www.elmaraseraphim.com, and fill out the contact form and tell us why you'd like to do the training. And I'll set up a free discovery session and have a chit-chat to you about doing the training, whether it's the right next step for you. If you've done Reiki or Reiki Master, Pranic Healer, Theta Healer, this is a good next step up for you, okay? Just breathe for me, please. Sorry, the puppy dogs are out playing, but I couldn't wait any longer for them to stop doing it, so just breathe for me, please. Okay, so Today's miracle is really more of a life hack. As I'm sure I've mentioned throughout this miracle series, my mother has been my greatest teacher. And mostly because of her disapproval. She was a Catholic who changed to be a Church of England to marry my father, and he was an atheist. He would go around the house going, God is shit, God is shit. And Mum would go off her face, you know. And even though she changed to be a Church of England, she still made us carry on Lent and weren't allowed to eat meat on Good Friday and all that sort of good stuff, which is fine. But she wasn't a Catholic anymore, and we certainly got our mouths washed out for soap with saying Jesus Christ or bugger or bloody. They were all swear words when I was a child. So just breathe for me, please. And she had a lot of really strong religious stuff going on there. And me being me, I was just like the whole, you have to be, you know, you got to remember I'm in my 60s. And it was a big thing back in the 50s, 60s, 70s that I'm a 50s baby, so 60s and 70s that you had to be married. You weren't allowed to have sex unless you were married and all that crap. And I used to question that and just go, that's a load of rubbish. Like what you're saying then, that marriage is just a license to have sex, and I just don't believe that's what it should be. And God, my poor mother, challenged her. And I wasn't very good at keeping my mouth shut, so I got myself in lots of trouble when I was younger. But I just want to tell you this miracle, because in the end it was a miracle because I let go of what was going on. So I can't remember what I'd argued with my mum about, but I'd argued with her about something. I was almost 50, which meant that she was almost 70. She's about 20 years older than me. And I remember saying to Source, to Spirit, like praying, why the hell can't she's 70 for God's sake, why the hell can't she just go home? Why won't she just go home? And this is what Source said to me, and this is what I want you to listen to clearly because it's so important. They said to me, Elle, why do you care? Well, you know, it just would make life easier. I could get my work out into the world. She had slammed the phone down on me about something that I'd mentioned, and I was hesitating about opening a temple in Melbourne because I just didn't want to have to deal with her disapproval and all the bullshit and barrage of stuff that would come flying my way from her. And anyway, I can't remember what it was, but she slammed the phone down on me and I was just cross, and I said to God, why the hell can't she just bloody go home? She's like nearly 70, for God's sake. And Spirit said to me, why do you care? Like, just why do you care? And well, you know, because it'll just be easier and blah, blah, blah. Spirit said to me, Elle, she's an old battle axe. And you're going to laugh at this bit. What about if she lives to be 90? You will be in your 70s before you took your work out into the world. And why? Why? Why do you care? She doesn't like you anyway. Why do you care what she thinks? And it was like a penny dropping going, oh my God, that's true. She doesn't like me. Why do I care what she thinks? So I opened my temple and another round of shit that happened just continued to happen. But it was stepping out. It was when I decided to open my temple, regardless of what she thought or felt or her, you know, horrible stuff she used to say to me about I was sending all the family to hell and all that. And I would say to her, well, I don't believe in hell. That's just made by religion to control you. And I certainly do not believe in hell. You know, like I believe that hell is what you do here on earth. There's no going to hell after you leave. You know, that's just made up by the church. That's just bullshit. It doesn't even resonate with me. It would make her furious or whatever. So anyway, what I wanted to say about that was that I went ahead then and opened my temple, and it was so freeing when I did that because I had lived my whole life waiting for her to pass away, or hopefully, so that I could get my spiritual work out into the world like fully. I was kind of like a closet spiritualist. I had a respectable job, and I had a part-time job from 40 onwards, but I'd always had corporate jobs and all of that. And I would be dressed up to the nines in suits and high heels and everything, and then on the weekend have bloody flowers in my hair and long flowing dresses. I was like a closet spiritual person. And I even remember so clearly one time my best client, like biggest and best client, had my hair, wasn't in a bun or anything, it was all flowing, it had all these flowers in it, roses or something in it. And I walked past my best client and he did not even recognize me. That sounded different. I used to kind of like be living like a double life. So, and that's where I used to use my old name as my business name before I changed it by default. And I would use my spiritual name on the weekends. And actually, I just remembered now what the last really big fight with her about was when I said to her, I'm going to change my name. And she went absolutely ballistic about it because, but as I said, my darling family gave me the initials of VD, and it's not such a big deal now, but by God, it was when the 70s and 60s and 70s when I was going to school. So especially when I got to high school in the early 70s. God, the kids gave me hell about that. And that's all character building stuff, not stuff I don't even know any of those people now, so it's no big deal. But that was the last straw when I was saying, why can't you just go home? And they go, why do you care what she thinks? She doesn't like you anyway. So, and I went ahead, opened the temple, shit hit the fan. But it didn't matter because I was doing what I wanted to do and I was no longer feeling that I was being restricted by what my mother thought. Just breathe for me, please. Just breathe for me. There's always magic in everything, and everything is perfect even when it doesn't look that way. It didn't stop my mother hating me. And it took her another 10 years of me standing in my power and doing what I wanted to do before she finally accepted me. So maybe, probably a good 10 years before she finally stepped up, maybe 8 years after I opened the temple, that she began to just accept me as a human being. Probably because she was in a lot of bloody pain with her knees and her hips and God knows what else, because she's now 87 this year and pushing 90, as Spirit said. And I was the only person who could help her take that pain away, which was just interesting. So, and I want to tell you another story about what happens when you just still start living your life, just so that you don't think there was lots of turmoil with me and my mother, and I still say to this day, she was my greatest teacher. I just want to share another story with you that I'm pretty certain I haven't shared, so that you can so that you can know that things can come full circle if you continue to honour the truth of who you are. So in 2000, so it must have been only 3 or 4 years after I opened the temple that things started to get better, because it was around 2014 that my mother came to stay with me in Tilba. When we started to get along a bit better, I said to her, look, I'd really like to go for a holiday with you, just a week, go for a holiday with you. I said, we'll probably end up killing one another, but I would still like to try. And we had set up that we were going to, she wanted to go to Tasmania, and we were going to catch the boat over and hire a car and drive around Tasmania together. And that was in the September. But I left Melbourne in the June or the July. And so that got put on hold. And I can still hear Source going, no, that was too much. My aura and her aura in the same car, we would have killed one another. And so it turned out that the following January, for some reason, her next door neighbour was coming over here. He bought old trucks and did them up. And he was coming over to look at an old truck from, it's not Coomera because that's a suburb here. Cooma, is it Cooma? Anyway, where they did all the um, started the hydraulic water thing in the snowy mountain sort of area between Canberra and New South Wales area. He was coming over to look at a car there, and that was only another 50 or 60, kilometres or something from where we were, and where I was staying in Tumultuous. So he and Mum drove over in his new car, and he dropped Mum off to me. And the great thing about that when she came was that she stayed in the second cottage on the farm I was staying in Tumultuous. They had another cottage that they rented out, and she stayed in that cottage. What was fabulous about that was that she would go and get up and have her breakfast and do all the things she wanted to do. And then about 10, 11 o'clock, we'd get together and we'd go do stuff together. Now, one of the things that we did was that we went picking wild blackberries that were on the farm. And they're supposed to be a toxic weed, but they're all in. Mum used to pick blackberries when she was a child and make jam out of them. So we went and picked all these bloody blackberries, got covered in blooming thorns and whatever on the property, and came back with tons of them and made all this jam and left some for the couple who had let us stay there for a week for $100 or whatever. And there was this moment, I want to tell you this so that you know that eventually if you just keep dealing with your stuff and the stuff that you need to deal with, like for me, I needed to open that temple and just follow my own path and stop blaming my mother for it, that there is resolution. Resolution can come. So this particular day, actually it would have been the day before that, we were just talking, and my father had passed away at this point, before that, a couple of years earlier, and she had just said to me that she was just laying on the bed. Actually, I've heard a few people say this as well when loved ones passed away. She was just laying on the bed and she began to think about Dad, and the whole room just turned to white, and she just felt this extraordinary love come over her. And I didn't say anything at the time, but by God, I was like, shit, God, I've worked my ass off my entire life, meditated, carried on, and, for bloody 30 years. And, I've had to work I've had a couple of those experiences, but I certainly didn't just get it from being a blooming negative, nasty old cow. And so I was really just having a go at Spirit. I didn't say that to her, but I did say this the next day. So the next day, after we picked all these blackberries, you have to pull the stalk bit out the top of it, and so that's because they go all brindle, like a stick in your jam otherwise. And we were prepping all these blackberries to make blackberry jam. And she was sitting across the table from me, and I was on the opposite side to her, and I just looked at her and said, if you had that huge white light experience, why did you give me such hell about my spiritual work? Why were you so nasty to me about it? This is a bit I want you to hear. I'm going to try and say it without crying. My mum looked me directly in the eye and said, I don't know, darling. It's probably because I didn't understand. But I'm really, truly sorry I treated you like that now. Just breathe for me, please. Now, 5 years earlier, when I was arguing with God about getting her to go home, and she'd slammed the phone down and been so bloody rude to me for the umpteenth time in my life. I'm the eldest daughter of my family. I have a brother older than me that's passed, 3 sisters younger, but because I'm the only one that's never married, she's always treated me like a child. And so she says, I don't know, darling. It's probably because I didn't understand, but I'm really, really sorry I treated you that way. For a long time, I couldn't tell anybody that story without bursting into tears. Because she finally saw me. And all of the shit that went before that moment just dissipated at that point. And I had peace. I've had peace with her. She still gets on my nerves sometimes. I'm sure I still get on her sometimes. But there's been a lot of peace since then. That was back in 2014. More peace than there's ever been in my 60-odd years on planet Earth. So just breathe for me, please. Now, you may not be that fortunate. You may not be that fortunate to do that before your loved one passes away. But I can promise you that when they pass away, excuse me, as I mentioned in my brother's story a couple of days ago, they're not the same about my dad when my dad was coming to get it. They're not the same. They don't have all the ego personality stuff they had when they're alive. They go back to being a source being of light. And so they show up really differently. I remember after my dad passed, one time I had this dream about him, and he was all like kitschy kitschy cooing with, or maybe, yeah, no, I must have had this dream that he was just being really kitschy kitschy cooing with one of the grandchildren or whatever in the dream. And he was being really, really, and I remember waking up sobbing because I didn't know that man. He had only ever been a bloody great big bully when I was alive, when he was alive, sorry, to me. And so it just showed that, and anyway, I think there's many stories there about my dad when he helped a lot of people in Tilba. He took over my job of, you know, doing the gatekeeping work and also just helping people that were stuck and needed because he was a Mr. Fix-It man. So when they pass, they're different. And if you have stuff with people that are past, try connecting into them now as a spirit being. You'll often find they will be proud of you for having the courage to do what they didn't have the courage to do, which is stand in your power and do what you came here to do. So that's just a little tip for you. I also, since we're kind of going over stuff, I want to just, there was a moment when I was telling Max's story that I kind of, like got distracted by all the noise on the roof. The thing that I was going to tell you was that when they were testing everybody to see if anyone was a match, they found out that my father had 4 kidneys, not 1, but not 2, but 4. And Dad didn't know that until they were testing to see if he was a match for Max. And what are the chances of that? And it explained why when he was a shearer and he would bend over, he'd sometimes get these pain like someone had stabbed him in the back. And it was when the 2 pipes for the 2 kidneys were twisting as he was shearing or whatever. And that's what it is. And that's the ironic story about it. My brother ended up losing 1 kidney at 15, gets a transplant at 35. And when they were searching before that just to see if they were matched, they found out my dad had 4 kidneys and none of them were a match. So sometimes our stories, sometimes it's just the way that it is. Like you would think that his father, Max's father, our father would have been a match for him. And certainly if he had 4 kidneys, it should have been a match for him. What's really interesting too about that story is my dad was just like he was because his father was a mongrel of a man and beat the crap out of him, and I'm sure his father was, etc., etc. Just goes back and back and back until someone says, this all stops here with me. But interesting, towards the end of my father's life, he ended up on dialysis as well because he got a disease in his kidney called nephrolitis or something, which is some kind of thing, some kind of virus or something that eats away at those 4 kidneys. And he ended up being on dialysis at the end of his life. But our kidneys are where we hold our fear. So all of that just kind of shows you. And that's why it's so important that the people who piss us off, like my mum or whatever, someone has to play the bad guy. And they're always trying to show us where we're not fully healed within ourselves, where we still have healing stuff to do within ourselves. So that's my miracle. It's a bit longer today as well, but I wanted to share that about my mum because I'm sure I've mentioned her throughout, and even if I haven't, it's really good to know that that you can come full circle. You can come full circle. And if my mum's unwell, I'm the person she rings to get help with that. So, alrighty. I'm just going to give you a 1-minute blast of 5th dimension, quantum 5th dimension source light, which you can just breathe in. If this particular miracle brought up some stories about your own family or your own unhealed stuff, then sit down and write a letter to them if they're passed away. And even if they're still here and you don't think you can talk to them, sit down and write a letter and write everything you want to say about them and then burn it. I wouldn't send it to them. It's a lot of times it's a waste of time. Until they come around themselves, it's actually a waste of time sending a letter, because I had sent them to my mother prior to that, to turning 50 and opening the temple, and all it did was put me in more bad books. Write it out so you get your stuff out. Read it for a couple of days, add anything else, and when it's done, when you know you've got it all out of you, just burn the bloody thing, because that's the best thing you can do, okay? Don't hang on to old shit, because, as this story tells you, both my brother and my father lost their kidneys because of the crap that they carried from their childhoods. Let's breathe. Right, gorgeous beings of light, that's us done for another day. We have one last miracle tomorrow.